SkyTour news for June 10th. I'm Amanda Curran. Today, in 1854, George Raymond proposes that space is curved. Born in what is now the Federal Republic of Germany in 1826, Raymond initially intended to study theology so that he could help support his family, but after he attended a lecture by Carl Friedrich Gauss and Moritz Stern in 1946, who inspired him to switch his studies, Raymond transferred to the University of Berlin the following year, studying under some of the most prominent mathematicians of his time. 2 years later, he returned to Göttingen to pursue his PhD with Gauss, completing his thesis in 1851 on the theory of complex variables, the basis for what we now call the Raymond surfaces. When Raymond was required to give a lecture to land a facility position at Göttingen, Gauss assigned his star pupil the topic of the foundation of geometry, where Raymond used the opportunity to develop a highly original theory of higher dimensions, described in a lecture called On the Hypotheses Which Lie at the Foundations of Geometry, which was delivered on this date in 1854, that included a workable definition of how one might measure the curvature of space. It wasn't published until 2 years after his death in 1866, and is now considered one of the most important works in geometry. Raymond went on to make valuable contributions to analysis, number theory, and complex manifold theory, amongst other areas. Today in 2003, the launch of the Spirit rover. Launched on this date in 2003, Spirit was the first of 2 rovers to be sent to Mars. Spirit, also known as Mir-A for Mars Explorer Rover A, or Mir-2, is a robotic rover on Mars, active from 2004 to 2010, and was one of 2 rovers of NASA's ongoing Mars Exploration Rover mission. It landed successfully on Mars at 4:35 UTC on January 4, 2004, 3 weeks before its twin Opportunity, or Mir-B, was launched on July 8th, and which landed on the other side of the planet. Aided by cleaning events that resulted in more energy from its solar panels, Spirit went on to function effectively over 20 times longer than NASA planners expected. Spirit also logged 4.8 miles of driving instead of the planned 0.4 miles, allowing more extensive geological analysis of Martian rocks and planetary surface features. Initial scientific results from the first phase of the mission were published in a special issue of the journal Science. On May 1, 2009, Spirit became stuck in soft soil, and for the following 8 months, NASA carefully analyzed the situation, running Earth-based theoretical and practical simulations, and finally programming the rover to make extraction drives in an attempt to free itself. These efforts continued until January 26, 2010, when NASA officials announced that the rover was likely irrecoverably obstructed by its location in soft soil, though it continued to perform scientific research from its current location. The rover continued in a stationary science platform role until the communication with Spirit stopped on May 22, 2010. JPL continued to regain contact until May 24, 2011, when NASA announced that the efforts to communicate with the unresponsive rover had ended, calling the mission complete. Today in 2010, Icarus successfully deploys their solar sail. The interplanetary kite craft accelerated by radiation of the Sun, known as Icarus, is a Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency experimental spacecraft that was launched on May 21, 2010, aboard an H-2A rocket, together with the Akatsuki, a Venus Climate Orbiter probe, and 4 other small spacecraft, and deployed its 46-foot wide solar sail through an innovative method that took advantage of spin, generating the biggest acceleration through photon during interplanetary flight in history on this date in 2010. Icarus demonstrated that while each photon is small and only generates a small push, over time, the accumulated energy from each one of the strikes pushes the solar sail, and everything attached to it, forward. The spacecraft was expected not only to go to Venus, but also to take off on its own for a 3-year trip around the other side of the Sun. On this date, in 2010, the 46-foot wide sail slowly unfolded as it spun at about 25 revolutions per minute, pulled out by the massive four-weighted tips working in microgravity. The folded solar sail moved out into a cross shape, at which point the spacecraft unfurled the membrane, and by July, JAXA was reporting the first push of photons on the solar sail. Later that month, JAXA found that it could also control the orientation of Icarus through using liquid crystal panels at the fringes of the sail. Electricity flowing through liquid crystal panels gives a reflection for the spacecraft to move forward, while turning the flow off makes the sunlight pressure more diffuse. By December 2010, JAXA reported that Icarus finished all experiments planned and is still continuing the first actual solar sail flying in order to enhance the skill of controlling solar sail. As of December 8, 2010, Icarus passed by Venus at about 50,200 miles distance and entered its extended operation phase. This is SkyTour News. I'm Amanda Curry.